It happened a few months after my dad passed. I got up just like I do every day and went over to my little prayer wall, said my normal daily prayers, and then got ready to leave. Before I left, I stopped there and I said, if anything out there is listening to me at all, if there really is anything listening to me, I could use a sign that you've got my dad or that he's okay, because this is going to absolutely destroy me. I'm not going to survive it. I walked away from there. I went about my day and I expected absolutely nothing. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I get a phone call from my brother. He said, hey, you remember that dream I had a few months back where Dad showed up at the house, but we all knew that he was gone, so it was weird that he was there because he's not supposed to be there? I said, yeah, why? He said, because that dream picked back up last night, right where it left off when he was asking for a cup of coffee. So I made him the cup of coffee. We sat down in the kitchen, we talked for a little while, and then he went to the front door to leave. He turned around when he got outside and he looked me square in the face and he said, this is my last stop. Tell Sarah I'm okay. I was just calling to relay the message. Halfway through the conversation, I knew, and I was going, oh God, you are not about to actually do this, because I asked you for a sign, but I don't really want it, because then I have to be held accountable, and I'm not interested in that. And then when my brother said what he said, it turned into irritation. Why couldn't you have just given me that dream? I would have loved to have seen my dad, even if it was just in a dream. Oh, that's right, because I talked about it, prayed for it, and my brain just dreamt it, so I would have written it off. Then my irritation turned to sheer panic. Is there actually a God listening to me? Is there actually somebody listening to me? Because if there is, I need to clean up my mouth. First things first. I've always heard people say that God knows what you need before you ask for it. And this was one of those things that I just could not chalk up to a coincidence. My brother had the first half of that dream 2 months beforehand. He had no clue that day that I had asked for that morning. God knew I was going to ask for it. So he gave my brother that dream that night so he could call me that afternoon. First time I've been able to tell that story without turning into a complete and total mess. What's your weird story?
In a world filled with noise, pain, and uncertainty, it's not unusual to question what you can't always see. Even some of the most faithful people in the Bible wrestled with doubt, like Thomas, who refused to believe until he saw the wounds in Jesus' hands with his own eyes. If you're in that place right now, if your faith is hanging by a thread, or if you don't believe in Jesus Christ at all, don't scroll away. Please take a moment to watch this video and listen to the testimonies that follow. The stories you're about to hear may sound like coincidences to some, but to the people who lived them, they were undeniable encounters, divine reminders that God is real and is always working behind the scenes. So if you've been questioning, if you've been wondering, please listen closely until the very end. What you're about to hear isn't fiction or exaggeration. These are true stories, moments that might look like chance to some, but to those who experienced them, they were clear personal evidence that God is real. He sees, he hears, and he's never stopped working.
So me and my husband were going through lots of issues trying to get pregnant. I had a miscarriage, I had a chemical pregnancy, and then I just wasn't getting pregnant for months. So something was clearly wrong. We had started talking to a fertility doctor, all that stuff. So one day my Bible was sitting by the window. All the windows in the house were open. And I noticed that a couple of the pages were flipped, kind of weird, tucked under, the wind had blown it over, the wind. So I was like, that's weird. So I saved the pages because I wanted to go back and read them later because I just felt like that was weird. Why are those pages turned like that? So later on, I go back and I read, and it was the page that was turned under. The first one was Genesis, and it was chapter 21. And the verse said, it was one of the first verses on the top of the page. It said, now the Lord was gracious to Sarah, and the Lord did what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant. Can you guess what my name is? My name's Sarah. So then, after that, a couple months later, a month and a half later, I'm sitting here on my couch by myself. It's the day that we were due with the most recent loss that we had. So I'm sitting there, I'm obviously upset, and all of a sudden this dove comes to the window, and it's trying to land, but there's nowhere for it to land. Goes to the window next to that. Again, it can't land anywhere. Finally goes to the door wall, which is next to the living room, and it lands on this piece of wood, and it just stares at me through the window for 2 minutes straight. And I'm just that's so weird. I immediately text my girlfriends. I tell them what happened, and my friend responds, and she's like, the dove is a huge symbol in the Bible that God is with you. That is such a huge symbol that he's there with you right now. I was blown away because I had no idea until after it happened. And finally, a month after that, we found out that I was pregnant, and I'm now 28 weeks with our rainbow baby. God is real.
Oh, he's real. God is real. I had just gotten kicked out of my shelter that I was staying at, the homeless shelter I was staying at, because I got into a little squabble. Another story for another day. And I moved into a Nissan Altima. You guys know the story. I lived inside a Nissan Altima for 8 months and 3 weeks. And while I was in a Nissan Altima, That particular night, it was so cold. It was freezing. My Nissan Altima was missing one window. The doors did not lock. And I'm just bawling my eyes out. I'm just crying. I'm like, I'm so over this. By the way, in those 8 months and 3 weeks I was staying in the car, I had lost my faith in God, because for me, I'm like, what kind of God will allow someone who's originally, predisposed to being sick, allow them to be homeless? Like, he must not exist. So I was an atheist for a little bit there. And so I'm in the back of my car, sleeping like I always do. I'm crying all night. And I just kept saying, God, if you exist, if you are real, you will show yourself to me, period. Nothing. I hear nothing from him. I didn't hear a sound. I didn't hear a peep. I'm just crying. Like, I'm literally cursing out this God that I no longer believe in. I'm just like, you're such a bad person. How could you do this to me? If you exist, you would just show up right now. You would tell me you exist. You will show up right now. Nothing. And so then I started playing R. Kelly's Storm Is Over Now. Now, you guys know that song. The last 30 seconds of it is a very powerful, like, it's just, you feel it viscerally. I think it's written by Kirk Franklin. And I must have played it at least 300 times. That could also be the fact that I'm on a spectrum. But I was hyper fixated on that song that particular night. Storm is over now. Yeah. And I can see the sunshine somewhere beyond the clouds. I can feel heaven. Heaven is over me. Would you come and set me free? Yeah. Would you come and set me free? Yeah, that song, I had played it like 300 times. I just kept playing it. And around 7 o'clock, I normally clock into American Apparel at 10 o'clock in the morning. But around 7 o'clock, I finally fell asleep. All night, could not sleep. I finally fell asleep. And I had a vivid dream of God, whatever that looks like God, reaching out to me and said, do you think I abandoned you? You thought you were keeping yourself safe this whole time? You by yourself, a young girl in a car that doesn't lock, that doesn't have windows. You thought that was all you? You thought that was all you? And he's chastising me, this God. Like, he's like, you thought I was all you? How could you ever doubt me, my child? How could you ever doubt me? I've always been here. I was just waiting for you to call me. I was just waiting for you to come home. So I was like, okay. I woke up and I said, if that was really you, you will get me out of this car by the end of today. I brushed my teeth like I always do inside of my car. I brushed my teeth. I got back in the car. I started, freshening up a little bit. And I opened my laptop, connected to my, my Wi-Fi on my phone. And I got an email from a company saying that, could you please come in for an interview tomorrow? And we would like to hire you. We would like to interview for a writing position. And so I was like, how do they even know I'm a writer? I work retail. And so I got this email at the time, specsandblazers@gmail.com. So I wrote them back, set up the interview. I went the next day and they were like, we're just looking for someone to push out articles for us on our website, on our blog. They're a fashion company and we'll pay you $500 per article. And you do have to get the, take the pictures and everything. And that's what we're looking for. And I was like, how'd you guys find me? They were like, from Tumblr. I was like, my Tumblr was just for fun. Like, I don't really post anything prolific on there, anything profound. Like, I write, but like not good enough to be hired by a company. I'm saying this all in my head, but I just kept saying to myself, okay, stay confident, remain confident. So I said $500 per article. They were like, yeah. And I said, if you can advance me my first 2 months right now, I don't know what gave me the confidence, the audacity to ask this. If you can advance me right now at this moment, we'll shake on it and I will never let you down. I'll make your company so famous. I will promote it till I can't breathe. They were like, huh? They kept looking at each other, the two ladies. They were so beautiful. They were like, huh? I was like, yeah, advance me right now. Cut the check right now. Give me $4,000 right now. I won't ask you for anything else. I will write your articles. I'm punctual. I'm tenacious. I will push it out on time every single Friday. You will not regret it, but give me 2 months right now. And they were like, I said, cut the check. And she goes to her table. She writes me a $4,000 check. She hands it over. I said, this check will not bounce, right? She's like, no, it won't bounce. You're sure? She's like, yeah, I'm sure. Okay. We shook on it. I went home. I put it in my Chase account. The check did not bounce. And I went and got a studio apartment. From that day on, I no longer have roommates. I had pride in myself. At 25 years old, I no longer have roommates. And I wrote for them for about 2 years before my influencing career took off. I say all this to say, God is real. You just have to listen. If you're in a rough place in life right now and you're wondering how could God do this to you, he does not exist. He's just waiting. I'm getting emotional. He's just waiting for you to call him. He's waiting for you to come home. And so much so, I remember like rushing back to my Nissan Altima, my baby, my push to start, because I had to literally push it to start. I remember running back to my driver's side before I got in the car, and I just got on my knees by my driver's side of the car, and I just kept saying, God, I will never doubt you again. I will never doubt you again. You are so real. And I will spend the rest of my life yelling and screaming your name at the top of my lungs for the rest of my life. And that's what I've done. I've experienced being broke here and there since, but I've never experienced that kind of poverty again. And every time I meet someone now who's like, I don't believe in God, God is not real, I go, so how's that working out for you? They usually always have a very chaotic life. And I just go, why don't you just give him a call? Why don't you just call him? He's waiting for you. Just call him. He'll pick up. I promise. And yeah, that's my story of the day, that how I was an atheist for only 8 months, and it was the worst 8 months of my life because our God is a jealous God. And ever since then, my faith in him has remained so strong. And it's palpable. Anyone who meets me knows that I put God first in everything that I do, and I never doubt him. I don't question him. Whatever he commands, I obey, because he's the greatest. I believe in you, and I hope you always believe in yourself. Stay fabulous.
Yes, God is real, because he teleported an angel into a gas station bathroom to save my life. When I was 20 years old, I was living in Florida with my boyfriend, now husband, and I was driving home to Missouri for Christmas. My path took me through Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, and onwards. And when I stopped at a gas station in Alabama, I went in to use the bathroom. The women's door was red, it was big, it was squeaky, it was wooden, and it was heavy. And I distinctly remember pushing open this bathroom door, walking in thinking, geez, that's kind of an aggressive door. There were 3 stalls in this bathroom. I check all of them because I always go for the cleanest one. I sit down to do my business, and the faucet turns on. Nobody opened that door. That door did not open. This person appeared in this bathroom. So I did what any sane person would do, and I shoved my head under the stall door to peek out and see what the heck was going on. And what I saw were a pair of grandma orthopedic shoes, you know, the grayish, tannish, all one color shoes. I sit up and finish what I'm doing, and I go out there, and there is a beautiful mixed race woman. She's a grandma. She has beautiful caramel skin, and she has the brightest, most piercing green eyes I have ever seen in my entire life. And she says to me, young lady, where are you going? I said, I'm going home to Missouri to see my family for Christmas. And I said, how about you? And she said, I'm going to go see my grandbabies. Go see my grandbabies up in Montgomery. We chatted a minute. I said goodbye, because at this point I'm still freaking out. And she says, young lady, I need you to hear me. I need you to listen. If you hear anything wrong with your car, you need to pull over immediately. Do you hear me? I said, yeah, okay. She's like, no, I need you to hear me. If you hear anything go wrong with your car, you need to stop and pull over. Do you understand? I said, I understand. I backed out through the door, and I swear to God, I stood there, and that door swung back in, and she was gone. And I stood there for 2 minutes just staring at that door, thinking, what just happened? So I get in my little Ford red ZX2 2-door sport coupe, and I get on the road. I do not turn on the radio. I do not keep my phone on me. Everything is silent. I drive for 2 or 3 hours like this, and I'm about like, well, this might be crazy. And then I hear tink, tink, tink. The slightest tink I've ever heard in my life. And had I had a radio on, I would have never heard it. And as soon as I heard it, I found the next exit. I pulled off. It was a Casey's gas station in the middle of nowhere of Kentucky. And as soon as I put my car in park, everything started happening with my engine. Tinks, booms, bangs, smoke came out. Come to find out, my timing belt had completely fallen apart. The chain broke. The mechanic later said he'd never seen anything like this. And had that happened when I was driving, I would have lost all power steering. I would have crashed and probably died. So is God real? Heck yes, he's real. Angels are real. This is my story.
So I'm not religious at all. I've always struggled with religion, and in the last couple of years I fall somewhere between agnostic and pagan. However, mine wasn't an experience, mine was a reoccurring person in my life. This person was this man. His name was Carl, and when I worked at McDonald's, he would come into McDonald's every single day, order a sausage biscuit, 2 grape jellies, and a medium coffee. Every day, after a while, he would ask me to come and sit with him on my break, and I did. He would sit and just tell me stories, and something about this man brought me so much comfort. Now, my daddy has always struggled with his religion as well, but my dad always said if you see somebody and they're hungry or they're struggling, try your best to help them because we could have angels on earth. One day when I was working at McDonald's, I had this lady come in and she had a bandana on her head and she didn't have any hair. And she comes up to the register and you could tell something was wrong. And she says, "Honey, I don't mean to bother you, but I had to travel from Lexington, Kentucky to be here, which is about 3 hours from where I worked. And I don't have any money to feed my son. Is there any way somebody could get me a sausage biscuit?" Now, my dumb 18-year-old brain, I thought, well, I work at McDonald's. This is a massive corporation. They must have some way to help these people. Let me get my manager. My manager comes to the front, and it was a simple, "No, there's nothing I can do for you." And they go back to the back. Again, I'm 18 years old. I was raised that you do what you can do when you can do it. So I said, well, okay, I'll just take my lunch money and I'll go hungry for the rest of the day. It'll be okay. And I had no means to help anybody. I was making $7.25 an hour, but there was something about this woman specifically where I couldn't ignore it. So I took, we'll say it was $5.50 out of my pocket, and I handed it to this woman, and I said, "Get what you want that's within that $5.50, but that's all I got." And she did. And for the rest of the day, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go hungry. Well, 10 o'clock rolls around, which is about the time that Carl comes in to eat his breakfast. And he orders, he sits down, and then at the end of when he's getting ready to leave, he walks up and hands me $5.50. And I said, "Carl, what's that for?" He said, "I don't know, I thought that you could just use a pick-me-up today." And that went on for years. The last day that I worked at McDonald's, I told Carl, this will be my last day. And he says, "Okay, well, come talk to me before I leave." And I said, okay. And it was hitting lunch hour, or we were just really busy that day, so I didn't get to. And he came up to me and he said, "Bye, honey, I love you." And I said, "I love you too, Carl." And he leaves. And then a while later, I got a job working about 2 miles down the road at a grocery store. And every day I used to think to myself, I need to walk down there and see Carl. So one day I'm working and I'm at the register, and I see a little old man walking in the door, and when it hit me who he was, I gasped. I went, and I ran to him and I said, "Carl." He goes, my baby. And after that, I used to walk the 2 miles every morning. I'd go into work early, go eat with Carl, and then I would come back, or his daughter eventually learned who I was, and she would take me back to McDonald's, or to the grocery store. A little while after that, I started working at the hospital. And one day I was getting ready to leave work, and I had one more patient that I needed to check on. So I went in the room, and I happened to look up, and I said, "Carl?" And he said, "There's my baby." This man probably hadn't seen me in a year, maybe a year and a half. And his daughter's sitting there, and she's visibly confused, and she said, "Who is this?" I said, "I used to have breakfast with him every day at McDonald's, and then I'd walk to see him at Save-A-Lot. Your sister's the one that used to take me back to Save-A-Lot." And she says, "Oh, okay." And every day that he was in the hospital, I would go before my shift, and I would sit with him and his daughters. One day, we were sitting there talking, and I said, "I'm getting ready to move." And she said, "Oh, you're moving?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Where are you moving to?" And I said, the area that I was moving to. And she said, "That's where Daddy lives." And I said, "Is it really?" And she said, "Yeah, where are you moving to?" And I told her, I said, "It's right across the train tracks." She said, you're going to be my daddy's neighbor." She said, "The little yellow house is Daddy's." So, I move, and one day she messages me and lets me know that he ain't doing too good, and that they were having trouble finding a caretaker for him. And I had been licensed to do that for years. So I told her, I said, "I'll tell you what, I will come be his caretaker completely for free as long as I get to spend time with him and I get to see him." We agreed upon that, and then sadly enough, he passed away shortly after. If there was ever an instance that made me question if angels are real and if we have people walking this earth that's meant to meet you and be in your life, it was him.
It was in my second rehab. I was always told that if you ever want God to show you something or that he's real or anything like that whatsoever, you pray about it, but you keep this prayer in your head and in your heart. You don't tell a soul, you don't write it down, you don't share it with nobody. This is an intimate prayer between you and God only. So that's what I did. My prayer was always the same thing. I kept praying for the same thing over and over and over while I was in there for months. And it was always, God, I don't feel you. I never changed it. I never told a soul. I never wrote it down anywhere. I never shared it with anybody. This was my intimate prayer with God and with God only. This was something that nobody knew in that home. It was a Sunday morning and it was church. And this lady named Hope came and she brought some other lady with her. And this lady had short hair with a headband. This lady was just the sweetest person that you could ever imagine. She had this warmth and this inviting feeling that when you were with her, you were just so at peace. And I don't know how else to explain it, but she had this light within her. It was praise and worship time and they sat behind us. And during that time, the pastor's son was in charge of the music. So there was no choir. He was doing like this whole DJ thing. I closed my eyes like I did every Sunday and every time we prayed and stuff. And again, I kept it to myself. I never said nothing. I never said a word. That prayer was silent. That lady in Hope is behind us. And as I was praying, I started hearing her singing, but her singing became louder, but it started sounding like she wasn't alone. I started feeling this warmth come over my body. And as I was praying, my prayer started getting faster and I kept saying the same thing. My prayer never changed. Next thing you know, I remember hearing what sounds like an angelic choir behind me singing with her, and everything else faded. The music that the pastor's son was playing was no longer playing, and all I heard was her and some choir singing the songs that they were singing and praising God. As I'm hearing that, I'm praying faster and faster and faster, and my eyes start getting watery. And next thing you know, she puts her hand on my back and she starts saying, "What do you mean you don't feel me? Reach for me. I have never, ever, ever left you." I fucking lost it. I fell to the floor, dude, and I was just crying. And the whole time, she never took her hand off me. And once she finished saying that, she went back to singing. And her voice just got louder and louder, and it became so, so beautiful. Don't tell me God's not real. Nobody in the world knew what I was praying for. This had been months. I don't want to hear nothing like, "Oh, you're probably still high." No. This was months that I was praying. This was something that I had told nobody. I don't even know this woman's name to this day. I don't know who she is. I never saw her again after that. She never came back to church. I don't know who she is. I didn't ask Hope about her or anything like that. I don't know. This happened in 2005, and
I was in a hospital in Jacksonville, Florida, a little bit over 7 years ago. I had just gotten jumped and robbed and left for dead. Jaw was broken 4 different places, got stabbed in the back, I was bleeding out, it was terrible, right? I was in active addiction. I woke up in the hospital, and in that hospital, I couldn't even talk, I couldn't eat, my mouth was wired shut. I had to stay there for a week. When it was time to leave, I went to sign my paperwork and I realized, I guess I'm homeless now too. I had just lost my family, lost my kids, my marriage, my house, everything. And I really did not care to live anymore. That's why I was doing what I was doing. I was living that lifestyle, right? But I asked God in that hospital bed, if he'll just give me a sign, I will change my ways and surrender my life to him. If he'll give me a sign and show me that life is worth living. Because at that point, it wasn't at all. And I was convinced that my time here on earth was done. I asked God to give me a sign. I left that hospital. I walked back to where I had written a room out, and I knew all my stuff would be stolen because it was in a crack house. In that moment, when I got to the house, I knew that God was with me. I felt something that I have never felt before. And God spoke to me. He whispered in my ear and said, "Son, go to rehab. Get your life together. This time it's going to work. I got on the phone, called a rehab. They had an open bed. Mind you, I was in Jacksonville, Texas. I called a rehab Jacksonville, Florida. I called a rehab in Dallas, Texas. Got on the Greyhound bus, came out here, went through the rehab program, been sober ever since. In that moment, at my lowest part, my lowest time in life, God was right there with me. There's more to the story that if I explain it, you guys are going to think I'm crazy. So I'm not going to get into the other details, but God is real. I've never believed in him my whole life until that moment. God is more than real. And because I believed in him and I'm telling the world about how real and how good he is, my life is better than I've ever imagined it could be. I've been sober for over 7 years now. Completely changed my life. Got my kids back. Got my own business. Living in the nicest place I've ever lived in. Life is good and I'm happy to be alive now. If God can do that for me, he could do it for you too. But you have to ask him and you have to believe in him. And once he does it, you're going to want to tell the world about him, just like I'm doing. So I wish that for you, okay? God is real, and I hope that you guys can find your relationship with him and he could change you just like he did me. All right? I love y'all. Bless.
This story is crazy, so be prepared. So y'all, I had met this girl through a mutual friend. We had been going out. We had got real close. We were going out and stuff. Like, she was that type of friend, like the party friend, you know? Like, you can't really take to church, but you can take to the club type of. So she was that type of friend. So me and her was looking for jobs together, specifically like club jobs, like bottle girls, whatever. So we was looking on Instagram. We DM'd a few clubs or whatever, and this one club DM'd us back. So we both went in for the interview, both got the job, and then we started training. So I'm not really used to working a regular job. Like, I'm not used to taking instructions by anybody because I worked for myself for so long. So it was kind of hard to get, adjusted. But I did want the job. So I'm like, let me stick it out. Let me, do what I need to. So fast forward to the first day on the job. We both start working, everything's going smoothly. Customers start rolling in, it's going good. So like 5 minutes into me working, my stomach starts hurting OD. Like, I don't know. And it wasn't no period cramps. It was like trapped. I don't know what it was. It was like sharp pains right here. So I'm just asking, I'm like, dang, this what happened to me right when I come into the job. Like, what's going on? So I'm like, all right, I'm about to go to the back. I'm about to stick it out. I'm just about to take some medicine and call it a day. So I went to the back. I sat down, drank some water, took some medicines. Nothing was helping, y'all. Nothing was helping. So I'm still trying to stick it out because, it's a lot of customers in the club at this point. So at this point, some of the customers is like looking at me like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, so I'm like, oh my God, I need to go to the back. So I eventually told the manager, I'm like, I need to go home. Like, my stomach is hurting so bad and it's nothing helping. Like, it's nothing I do about it. So the manager let me go home or whatever. And I started driving home. I kid y'all not. As soon as I pulled in my apartment building to my garage, my stomach stopped hurting miraculously. So I'm like, and before I even got the job, it was this strong feeling over me. It was God like telling me like, don't accept this job. Don't do it. I have something better for you. So y'all, my stomach stopped hurting out of nowhere. I went to go lay down in my house and everything was cool. Y'all, 2 hours later, the same friend that I got hired with at that job called me and told me that the club got shot up. When I tell y'all, I start bawling. I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Oh my. I said, what? Like, is this why my stomach started hurting and stopped hurting as soon as I got home? Like, this was God. And I think like 2 people got shot, 3 people got injured, 1 died. It was crazy. And y'all, I already knew God. I grew up in the church, all of that. So I already had a relationship with God, but this made me like, whoa. Like, I trusted God on a whole different level.
So about 2 years ago, I went to feed the homeless with my group, Breaking Chains of Hunger. Well, we decided to go feed the homeless in Fort Worth. And this was unusual for us because we try to stay in like the center of Dallas area. So we go out there and we're out there for maybe 30 minutes. And my spirit just tells me to walk the other direction. The rest of the group is all walking the opposite way. So I was like, okay. I started to walk the other way and I could hear my group yelling at me, Jabria, come back. You can't walk by yourself. And I'm like, okay, well, somebody come with me because I have to go this way. Maybe a minute into walking the opposite direction, this man is yelling at me. He's like, hey, Q, come here. And so initially I'm like, okay, he just might want a meal and a backpack. So I'm like, yes, sir, I'm coming. So I walk towards him, and he goes, my friend had a dream about you. I'm like, me? He was like, yes, you have to come meet him. Y'all, we started walking, and it's this man in a wheelchair. I've never seen this man a day in my life. And when he looked at me, it was like he saw a ghost. And I'm like, do you need a meal? Do you need a backpack? Like, what can I do for you? And he looks at me and he goes, do you believe in God? And I was like, yes, I do. I do, actually. Because, nobody really asks those questions when you're being homeless. So when he asked me, it threw me off. But I was like, yes, I do. And he was like, you're a gift to me from God. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, a week ago, I prayed to God to send me a sign that he still loved me, he still cared, that I'm going to be okay. Y'all, this man went to sleep, had a dream about my face. He drew me with dreads. I had just decided to get my hair locked a week prior to this event. And so I looked at the picture and he looked at me. He goes, for the longest, I kept saying, why did I draw Lauryn Hill? Y'all, when I looked at that picture, it was not only confirmation for me, but it was confirmation for him. And that lit a fire under me. And it was like, you really don't realize how important you are in somebody else's story as long as you're, as long as you're obedient. I am shaking thinking about it because till this day, all I gave that man was a backpack full of hygiene products and a hot meal. That's it. Oh, but the blessing I received after that, the blessing he received through my God. You can't tell me God is not real.
Sometimes in life, things happen that logic just can't explain. A stranger shows up at just the right time. A door opens that should have been shut. A dream reveals something that later comes true. For many of us, these strange coincidences were the very moments we realized God is real. Romans 1:20 says, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. Whether through nature, a perfectly timed encounter, a stirring in your spirit, or a door that opens against all odds, God often reveals himself in ways we never expected. Proverbs 16:9 reminds us that a man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. These moments might seem small or strange to others, but to the person experiencing them, they feel divine. And James 1:17 says, every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights. So when something odd happens that brings comfort, direction, or peace, it's not luck. It's God showing you he's closer than you think. People often say, oh, that was lucky when something good happens. But scripture teaches that God is in control of all things, even the ones that seem random. And let's be honest, there are no coincidences in life. Nothing is beyond God's knowledge or power. Everything is either ordained or allowed by him. God is sovereign, and so nothing happens by chance. When something unexplainable happens, when the timing is too perfect, or when help shows up just in time, it's not the universe, and it's not fate, it's God. Jeremiah 10:23 says, Lord, I know that people's lives are not their own. It is not for them to direct their steps. In our world, we often call things coincidences, a random meeting, an unexpected phone call, or a near miss that saved a life. But in the kingdom of God, nothing is random and nothing is wasted. Proverbs 16:13 tells us, "The lot is cast unto the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord." So even what makes or what seems like chance is under God's control. And here's the truth. God often doesn't reveal himself through loud, spectacular signs, but through quiet, personal moments. The coincidences in courts that were too specific, the peace that came when you should have been falling apart, the stranger who showed up right when you needed help. Psalm 19:1 says, "The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands." Sometimes God doesn't shout, he just whispers. And those whispers often come through strange timing, unexpected blessings, or a gut feeling that turns out to be divine protection. People of God, these aren't just random events. They are God's fingerprints. And some of the people in this video felt the same way. Distant, unsure, skeptical, until something happened. Something strange, something unexplainable, and something too specific to be random. And that's the thing about God. He often reveals himself in the moments we least expect. These moments might just be the nudge your soul has been waiting for. Because with God, there are no coincidences. All over the world, people have experienced things that defy logic. Events so perfectly timed, so deeply personal, they point to one undeniable truth: that God is real. Jeremiah 33:3 says, "Call unto me, and I will answer thee, and shew thee great and mighty things, which thou knowest not." Many of these stories are living proof of that promise. Even without a formal prayer, even with just a silent cry or a passing thought, God responds. Why? Because God doesn't just hear our words, he knows our hearts. Hebrews 4:13 says, "Nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight. Everything is uncovered and laid bare before the eyes of him to whom we must give account." And Matthew 6:8 echoes this truth, that your Father knows what you need before you ask him. So many of these divine encounters happen not because of a perfectly worded prayer, but because God saw the need before it was spoken. What the world calls coincidence, we recognize as divine providence. You may have thought it was just a random moment, but the truth is, God was orchestrating the entire scene. And these testimonies remind us that God still speaks, still moves, and still cares. He's not a distant deity. He's a personal God. Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Every story in this video echoes the truth of Romans 8:28 as well. It says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." And whether it's a timely stranger, a supernatural provision, or a life-saving moment, God is at work. He is real, and he is closer than you think. Have you ever had a moment that made you stop and say, "That had to be God"? Share your story in the comments below, and like and subscribe if this video blessed you. Thank you for watching, and may God bless you.